Cool. Good evening, everyone that's been following along tonight. It's been a long night and we still really do not have a decisive result at this stage. I'm here with Dr. Kevin Bonham, who's one of Australia's leading election analysts, and we'll discuss what we know so far about tonight's results and go through a few things. So the major headline of the night is that I think it's too close to call. What do you think about that, Kevin?
Yeah, Labor is in a fairly strong position, but there are still some uncertainties, and there's also when things are this close on the projection, you also want to do a fair bit of checking of the numbers to see if there's any Wentworth style issues with them. I haven't seen any so far, but you just want to have a bit of a look at it to be sure before you go and say yes, this is definitely all over. But I think there's also issues with the remaining pre-polls and postals. Let's see whether it's going to get closer.
Yeah, I think we still have 7 pre-poll booths to come in with the two candidate preferred votes, so that is going to take a long time.
Yeah, I'm mainly interested in the remaining Queanbeyan one. I haven't seen how many. I don't know how many votes it's got, but the pattern in the first Queanbeyan one was quite bad for Labor. So if the second one is bad as well, that will narrow things down quite a bit on the projection. But there are other places where Labor might improve, and there's some whispers that they might be doing not too bad on postals. So we'll see.
Yeah, I expect that Labor will do better in Canberra, but Queanbeyan City was 7,500 voters voted there as pre-poll, as opposed to 4,000 at the other booths. So that is quite a big hit to come in. Cool. So the analysis so far is obviously election day. There was a very, very small swing to the Liberal Party and Fiona Kochos. That would not be enough, that swing, if it matched the 2019 election. And pre-poll tonight, it looks like we might have to do our own analysis, Kevin, because the AEC is apparently not going to do a 2 candidate preferred count for all pre-poll booths.
Yeah, they're basically winding up and they're aiming to have all the primaries up, but there's a number where they're not going to have the two-party preferred tonight. So we're going to have to estimate it from the ones that we've got so far, have a bit of a look at whether the two-party preference flows are different to the booth flows for the same sorts of primary votes, that kind of thing, and see if that helps. The Liberal primary vote is actually quite high, but it seems that they're just not doing very well on preferences.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. They're up about 1.5% right now in their primary vote, and in pre-poll, it's looking pretty good for them on the primary vote. But I think the shooter fishers and farmers' preferences are strongly flowing to Labor, with their preference still there, and that's been a big discussion point of the night.
The Nationals' preferences are also may have weakened. There sort of seems to be a consensus that they have weakened compared to last time when they flowed 87% to Coalition, 87% to Liberal.
Yep, I'm sure we'll both be doing more analysis on that later tonight, trying to work out what is the actual position of these two parties. The polls, Kevin, I'm not sure if you've had time to look at this tonight, but how do you think seat polling's done tonight?
Not as badly as it normally does, so that's a relief. I saw the Australia Institute, one of the people from the Australia Institute were trumpeting their poll. Now, it looks like they've overcooked the Labor primary by something like 3 or 4%, but that's for a seat poll, that's pretty good, really. If Labor wins, if Labor wins and it's then I would, and it's not micro close, then I would say that the seat polls have done okay. The UComs ones anyway. We had 4 UComs ones during the campaign that all predicted narrowish Labor wins 51, 52, 53, and then you had all kinds of rumours about other people's polling that was never published in much detail.
Yeah, cool. I don't really follow the polling anywhere near as closely as you do. I just tend to assume that seat polling is garbage and leave it right there.
Generally safe.
I think what we can also say from tonight, though, is that national polling, if you were to try and imply a result, it's all pretty stable compared to last year's election at this point of the night.
Yeah, national polling. I look at national polling in modelling by-elections because there is quite a correlation between national polling at the time of a by-election and the result. And this result is, as it stands at the moment, is consistent with the national polling. It's not sending any kind of signal about the national polling whatsoever. If you had somebody winning by miles, you'd say, maybe the national polling's a bit fishy. But if you had the coalition winning it all, you'd probably say the national polling. Maybe you'd ask a question about it, but not on this. And narrow Labor win is probably the best result for the national polling, but people won't portray it that way, I suspect.
Yep. The politics of this, does this by-election mean anything, do you think?
You get this constant spinning of by-elections, and they're always so inconclusive because they're always so individual, and there's always so many weird things going on in them. And this one, above perhaps any others, is just so much going on that all this spinning that you'll hear about, this is a bad result for Labor, this is a bad result for so and so. I think a win by any margin, if Labor do win it, they would be fine with that. A loss is a bad result if they lose. Some parties that have run have not done very well. I think the Greens result is quite poor. They seem to have had their vote paired off by basically every micro party in sight. The Christian Democrats result is very poor. But for the big parties, it's just not different enough to what was expected, I think, to read any big signal into it.
Yeah, my thoughts this afternoon was that tonight's numbers, usually the by-election is the most important political number of the day, but Victoria coronavirus cases are certainly the key number of the day, I think, in political terms.
Yes, and particularly without a decisive result, it's going to be, without a decisive result on the night, that's going to put a bit of a damper on some of the spin, or at least I hope so personally.
Yep, we'll try and keep it spin-free zone here. The counting on election day, I'm sure this is going to be a hotly discussed topic, and whether we should actually move to pre-poll counting starting before the close of polls.
The sort of you have a lockdown situation where people can go in, but they have to surrender their mobile phones, and then you start counting the pre-poll votes at 4 p.m. or something like that. There are probably some issues associated with it in terms of people who might be doubling as booth staff and for a party, and scrutineers can't do both at the same time. But overall, this is a bit of an issue, and I think it's been made worse by the coronavirus precautions that I think have slowed the count quite a bit tonight. It's still a lot better than the count in the Queensland by-elections. That was a complete disaster, but it's not quite the level that we're used to in terms of the amount of detail we get on the night.
Yeah, I was actually surprised because I would have assumed that they put on extra stuff specifically for tonight, knowing all the coronavirus-related restrictions they have on counting, but also in that it's a single by-election, so you've got the opportunity to recruit more experienced staff right across the Canberra area as well. So.
Yeah, I think there are issues with big pre-polls, with these super big pre-polls, that they're going to take a long time to count, no matter how many people you have. That's the impression I get.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Well, I think that's all that I had, Kevin, but do you have any other questions for me or comments?
I think we're going to be one thing that we're going to be looking at in the coming days, if it's looking like it might still have life in it, is how many postals we might actually get. That's a bit of an uncertain, because the postal count in terms of applications sent out is quite high, but I don't know. It takes a while before you know how many of them actually come in, and a lot of people may have applied for postal vote and then not used it. So that's something I'll be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, that's very hard to tell. The return rate for the 2019 election was 80%. So if you use that for the 16,840, it's a bit over 13,000 postal votes we do expect to be returned in this election, which is an awfully long count. And the Liberals gained about 800 postal votes in last year's election. So if it's within 800 votes tonight, or after pre-polls have been counted, I'd favour them. But if it's not within 800 votes, I'd be favouring Labor. Well, I think that wraps us up for tonight. Thanks for following along my coverage, and you can also find Kevin Bonham at Kevin Bonham on Twitter and his wonderful blog at kevinbonham.blogspot.com. I'm sure he'll be blogging late into the night as he usually does in these interesting post-election counts, and he'll have some interesting analysis on where those preferences are actually flowing as well. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight, Kevin. And
very welcome. It's been fun to do something different.
Yeah, it's definitely been a fun experiment tonight, and thanks for everyone who's come along and had a watch. I think we have a couple of questions. Do you think high pre-poll ordinary voting is a continuation of a broader trend or more to do with COVID?
Oh, the pre-poll, I don't think the total pre-polls are up that much on the previous one. It's more the switch to postals. More people sending in postal applications who wouldn't normally do so. I think that's the COVID specific thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like pre-poll was not as up as much as I expected it to be at all. It was only up about 5% in total. So
probably there's some churn there where some people who would have pre-polled are getting a postal vote, and some people who wouldn't have pre-polled are pre-polling.
Yep. And on the more political question, any idea on consequences for Barilaro and the Nationals more generally?
Oh, this is going to be interesting as we get the numbers in. If the margin is close and it turns out that a shift in Nationals preferences has done it, but you won't know that for a few weeks. I think that some of his interventions were very unhelpful, despite which the Liberal primary has still held up very well, and the Nationals primary has not been that great.
Yeah, I think their bigger problem is actually the shooters, fishers and farmers and their ability to take seats off them in New South Wales is a big issue for the National Party. So that's my consequences. I think we've answered all our wonderful viewers' questions. Thanks again for following us. I hope you've all had a great night and are all happy, safe and coronavirus free. And thanks very much.
Okay.